It was a Thursday morning when I walked into the hospital boardroom and my daughter laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle, a full, derisive laugh that echoed off the mahogany walls. My son-in-law Brett wouldn't even look at me. He studied his expensive leather briefcase like it held the secrets of the universe. The hospital attorney went pale. Her hand froze halfway to her coffee cup, and she whispered something I couldn't quite hear to the board chairman. Everyone turned to stare. Nobody said a word. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a scalpel. Which was ironic, really, because they had no idea who they were dealing with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up 6 months to when this whole nightmare began. My name is Dr. Margaret Chen, and for 37 years, I was one of the most respected OB/GYN surgeons in Seattle. They used to call me the Guardian because I never lost a mother, not one. 347 high-risk deliveries, and every single woman walked out of my operating room alive. I had hands that could tie microsurgical sutures blindfolded, and instincts that could spot a placental abruption before the monitors even registered a problem. Then my husband David got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. They gave him 6 months. I gave him 18. I retired at 65, traded my surgical scrubs for sweatpants, and became a full-time caregiver. No regrets. David had supported my career through decades of midnight emergencies and missed anniversaries. It was my turn. When he died, I was 66 years old, alone in a house that suddenly felt too big, with a bank account that held more money than I could spend in 2 lifetimes and absolutely nothing to do with my days. That's when my daughter Victoria started calling more often. At first, I was grateful. Victoria had always been busy with her career, climbing the ladder at Pacific Northwest Medical Center until she became their chief financial officer. Married to Brett, a successful medical malpractice attorney, living in a beautiful home in Mercer Island. Our relationship had been cordial but distant, especially after David died. So when she started inviting me to Sunday dinners, I thought maybe we were finally building something. I should have known better. The first red flag came 3 months after David's funeral. Victoria and Brett showed up at my house with a lawyer I'd never met. "Mom, we need to talk about your estate planning," Victoria said, settling onto my sofa like she owned it. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Brett's been reviewing your financial situation, and there are some concerning gaps in your trust documentation." "Gaps?" I set down my tea. "I have everything in order. Your father and I worked with our attorney for years." Brett finally spoke, his voice smooth as oil. "Dr. Chen, I mean no disrespect, but your documents were last updated 8 years ago. Tax law has changed significantly, and frankly, at your age, we need to consider the possibility of cognitive decline." At my age, I was 66, not 96. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." Victoria reached over and patted my hand like I was a child. "Of course you are, Mom. We're just trying to help." Brett's offered to review everything pro bono, as family. The lawyer they'd brought stayed silent, just watching, taking notes. I said I'd think about it. They didn't like that answer. Over the next few weeks, the visits increased. Victoria would drop by just to check on me, always commenting on something concerning, the hedge that needed trimming, the mail piling up on the counter, the fact that I'd worn the same sweater 2 days in a row. "Are you eating properly, Mom? You look thin. Have you been taking your medications? I noticed the bottles aren't organized. Dad used to handle all the bills, right? Are you sure you're keeping track of everything?" Each question chipped away, designed to make me doubt myself. I recognized the tactic. I'd seen adult children do it to their aging parents before, softening them up, making them feel incompetent. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 4 decades reading people under pressure. I could spot manipulation from a mile away. So I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed that Brett always steered conversations toward the Margaret Chen Foundation, the maternal health charity David and I had established 20 years ago. It had grown to nearly $4 million, funding prenatal care for low-income women across Washington state. I noticed that Victoria kept pressing me to give her power of attorney, just in case. I noticed that Brett's law firm had recently lost 2 major cases. His name was mentioned in a legal blog about attorneys facing ethics complaints. And I noticed that my grandson Tommy, Victoria's 8-year-old son, stopped coming to visit me. He's busy with soccer, Victoria explained. But when I called Tommy's school to send him a birthday gift, the secretary mentioned he'd been absent a lot lately. Family troubles, she said quietly. That's when I started making my own plans. I'm a surgeon. Surgeons don't panic. We assess, we plan, and we execute. So I did what I do best. I gathered my tools and prepared for surgery. First, I contacted my own attorney, Ellen Kowalski, a woman I'd known for 25 years. I told her everything. Margaret, she said, her face grave, I think they're building a case to have you declared incompetent. If they succeed, they'll control your estate and the foundation. Can they do that? If they can prove you're not capable of managing your affairs? Absolutely. And your daughter's position at the hospital gives her access to medical experts who could testify. Brett knows every trick in the book for these cases. What do I need to do? Ellen leaned forward. Document everything. Every conversation, every visit, every request. Get a medical evaluation from an independent physician proving you're of sound mind. And Margaret, don't let them know you suspect anything. So I became invisible. The confused widow they expected to see. I let the mail pile up. I wore old clothes. I forgot appointments. I asked Victoria to repeat things, looked confused by simple questions. I played the part perfectly, and while they thought I was declining, I was building my case. I found a private investigator, former police detective named Sarah Reeves. I need you to look into my son-in-law's finances, I told her. Something's wrong, and I need to know what. 3 weeks later, Sarah came back with a file 2 inches thick. Dr. Chen, she said, sliding it across the coffee shop table, your son-in-law is in serious trouble. He's being investigated for embezzlement from 3 different client trust accounts. He's been using your daughter's hospital position to settle cases under the table, splitting the money and burying the complaints. And here's the kicker. He's been making donations to your foundation, then billing them as legal expenses and taking the money back out through a consulting company he owns. I felt my hands go cold. He's stealing from the charity? $500,000 over the past 18 months. I have bank records, email trails, everything. Does my daughter know? Sarah's expression answered that question. The emails suggest she's been helping him hide it. I'm sorry. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Clarity. I need you to keep digging, I said. I want everything. That same week, I started volunteering at the Genesis Women's Shelter downtown. They had a small medical clinic that provided basic prenatal care, but they'd been without a doctor for months. I didn't tell Victoria. I didn't tell anyone except Ellen. 3 mornings a week, I put on scrubs for the first time since retirement and went back to work. The shelter director, a firecracker named Rosa Martinez, nearly cried when I offered. Dr. Chen, we can't pay much. I don't need money, I told her. I need purpose. Within a month, I was performing ultrasounds, managing high-risk pregnancies, and even assisting in deliveries at the county hospital when my patients needed surgical intervention. My hands remembered everything. My instincts were sharp as ever. I wasn't declining. I was thriving, and I documented everything. Every surgery, every patient outcome, every hour worked. Then came the Sunday dinner where it all came to a head. Victoria had invited me to their house, which was unusual. Brett actually smiled at me, which was even more unusual. Tommy wasn't there. Sleepover at a friend's, Victoria said quickly when I asked. Over the roasted chicken, Brett cleared his throat. Dr. Chen, Victoria and I have been discussing your situation, and we think it's time to make some changes. Changes? Victoria took over, her voice professionally sympathetic. Mom, you're not managing well on your own. We've been documenting concerning behaviors for months. Missed appointments, bills piled up, hygiene issues. I shower every day, I interrupted. And we think it would be best if you moved into a nice assisted living facility. We found a lovely place, very upscale. You'd have your own apartment, but there'd be staff to help with medications, meals, daily activities. I set down my fork. I don't need assisted living. Brett pulled out a folder. We have medical documentation suggesting otherwise. And legally, We can petition the court to appoint a guardian if you're unable to make sound decisions about your own care. There it was, the trap, sprung. The foundation I started would be managed by a trustee, Brett said smoothly. Someone with financial expertise. We're thinking Victoria could take over as administrator. It would be much more efficient. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She couldn't meet my eyes. I need to think about this, I said. Mom, there's really nothing to think about, Victoria said, and I heard the impatience creeping in. We're trying to help you. Unless you want this to go to court, where everyone will see exactly how much you've declined. I said I need to think about it. Brett's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. But Dr. Chen, we'll need an answer by the end of the week. Otherwise, we'll have no choice but to file the petition. I left before dessert. That night, I called Ellen. They're going to file. Then we move first, she said. Tomorrow, I'm filing a motion to freeze all transactions related to the foundation pending an audit. And we're going to request a competency evaluation by an independent medical board. Will that stop them? It'll slow them down. And Margaret, it's time to stop playing weak. Show them who you really are. The competency hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday at Pacific Northwest Medical Center, where Victoria worked. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd chosen the venue thinking it would give them home field advantage. They had no idea what was coming. I dressed carefully that morning. Not the frumpy sweaters and elastic waist pants I'd been wearing. I pulled out the charcoal suit I used to wear to medical conferences, did my hair, put on the pearl earrings David gave me for our 30th anniversary. Ellen picked me up at 8. Ready? Ready. The boardroom was set up like a courtroom. Long table at the front for the 3-member medical panel. Chairs for attorneys. Observers in the back. Victoria and Brett were already there, sitting with their lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Marcus Webb. When I walked in, Victoria actually laughed. That derisive, cutting laugh I mentioned at the beginning. "Oh, Mom," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You really dressed up for this. That's sweet." Brett looked at his briefcase. The hospital attorney went pale. The board chairman, Dr. Robert Hayes, stood up slowly. He was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Dr. Chen?" he said. "Margaret Chen?" "Hello, Robert," I said calmly. Marcus Webb stood up. "Your Honor, I mean, Dr. Hayes, if we could begin the proceedings." But Dr. Hayes was still staring. "I don't understand. Victoria, you're petitioning to have Dr. Margaret Chen declared incompetent?" Victoria's smile faltered. "My mother, yes. She's been showing clear signs of cognitive decline." "Your mother," Dr. Hayes interrupted, "is one of the most brilliant surgeons I've ever worked with. She taught half the OB/GYN department their surgical techniques. The guardian? That's who you're trying to declare incompetent?" The room went very quiet. Brett recovered first. "Dr. Hayes, with all due respect, Dr. Chen is 67 years old and hasn't practiced medicine in 2 years. We have documentation of concerning behaviors." "I'd like to see that documentation," said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. A woman in her 50s stood up, wearing surgical scrubs. I recognized her immediately, Dr. Amanda Pierce, one of the top maternal fetal medicine specialists in the country, and one of my former residents. "Amanda," I said, "thank you for coming." Victoria's face had gone from confident to confused to pale. "What is she doing here?" Amanda walked to the front of the room. "I'm here as an expert witness, Victoria. Your attorney requested a medical evaluation of Dr. Chen's competency. I'm providing one." She placed a file on the table. "For the past 3 months, I've been working with Dr. Chen at the Genesis Women's Shelter. She's been providing prenatal care, performing ultrasounds, managing high-risk pregnancies, and yes, performing surgery. Her skills are not only intact, they're exceptional. Last week, she assisted me on an emergency C-section for placenta previa. The mother and baby both survived because of her quick thinking and surgical precision." Brett shot to his feet. "That's impossible. Dr. Chen hasn't been working. I have 53 patient files that say otherwise," I said quietly, "along with detailed surgical notes, outcome reports, and testimony from a dozen medical professionals. I've been working 3 days a week for 3 months, documenting everything. I pulled out my own file and slid it across to Dr. Hayes. I also have the results of a comprehensive cognitive evaluation performed last week by Dr. James Mueller at the University of Washington. Full neuropsychological testing. I scored in the 99th percentile for my age group. Marcus Webb was flipping through papers frantically. Victoria looked like she might be sick. This hearing, Ellen said, standing up, was based on false pretenses. The petitioners have been documenting manufactured evidence of incompetence, while Dr. Chen was actually working as a physician and maintaining full mental capacity. Why? Dr. Hayes asked, looking at Victoria. Why would you do this to your own mother? I answered before Victoria could. Because of the foundation. They want control of the Margaret Chen Foundation. $4 million designated for maternal health care. I nodded to Sarah Reeves, who was sitting in the back. She came forward with another file. Over the past 18 months, I said, my son-in-law Brett has been embezzling money from the foundation through fraudulent consulting fees. He's also been settling malpractice cases under the table using my daughter's position at this hospital, taking illegal kickbacks, and hiding the money in offshore accounts. Brett went white. That's a lie. I have bank records, Sarah said, email correspondence, wire transfers, and testimony from 3 of your former clients who are willing to testify that you coerced them into dropping legitimate malpractice suits in exchange for cash payments. Dr. Hayes looked at Victoria. Did you know about this? The silence was damning. Your daughter, Sarah continued, has been using her access to hospital records to identify potential malpractice cases before they're reported. She tips off Brett, he contacts the patients, and they split the settlement money. The hospital thinks the cases were resolved internally, the patients think they got a fair payout, and Brett and Victoria pocket the difference. We were helping people avoid drawn-out litigation, Victoria said, her voice shaking. We were protecting the hospital. You were committing fraud, Ellen said flatly. And when your mother started asking questions about the foundation's finances, you decided to have her declared incompetent so you could control the money and hide your crimes. Dr. Hayes stood up. This hearing is over. The petition is denied, and Victoria, Brett, you need to leave. Now. Hospital security will escort you out, and you can expect to hear from our legal department. Brett grabbed his briefcase. You can't prove any of this. The FBI can, Sarah said. I've already turned over all the evidence to the federal prosecutor's office. They'll be contacting you shortly. That's when Victoria started crying. Not delicate tears, ugly, gasping sobs. Mom, please, we can fix this. I made mistakes, but please. I looked at my daughter. This woman I'd raised, nursed through childhood illnesses, celebrated with at her wedding, supported through law school when she decided to switch careers to hospital administration. This woman who'd been willing to destroy me to cover her crimes. Where's Tommy? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Where is my grandson, Victoria? At home, she whispered. Alone? On a school day? Brett's mother is watching him, she said. But I could tell she was lying. I turned to Sarah. Find out where Tommy is. Make sure he's safe. Then I looked back at Victoria. You have 1 hour to collect your belongings from your office. Ellen will be in contact with settlement terms. You'll repay every penny you stole from the foundation. You'll surrender your medical administration license. And you'll stay away from me until I decide if I ever want to see you again. Mom, I'm not done. Tommy will live with me. I'm filing for emergency custody today. You can't take my son. Watch me, I said. You're about to be indicted for fraud and embezzlement. Brett's going to prison. You're going to be fighting for your own freedom. Tommy deserves better than being collateral damage in your mess. Brett tried to argue. Dr. Hayes had security remove him. Victoria sat frozen in her chair until Ellen physically guided her out. When the room finally emptied, only Dr. Hayes, Amanda, and I remained. Margaret, Robert said quietly, I'm so sorry. If I'd known. You didn't know because I didn't want you to know, I said. I needed them to think they were winning. It was the only way to gather enough evidence. Amanda put her hand on my shoulder. You could have told me. I would have helped. I know. But I needed to do this myself. To prove I could. 6 months later, Brett pleaded guilty to 15 counts of fraud and was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Victoria avoided jail time by cooperating with prosecutors, but she lost her medical administration license and spent a year in supervised probation. She repaid $400,000 to the foundation and agreed to stay away from me and Tommy for 2 years, with supervised visits after that only if I approved. Tommy moved into my house the day after the hearing. He was quiet at first, confused about why his parents were suddenly gone, but slowly he opened up. We established routines. Homework at the kitchen table, Saturday morning pancakes, bedtime stories. He started calling me Gran instead of grandmother. Started smiling again. I continued working at the Genesis shelter, but I also started teaching again. Medical students who wanted to specialize in maternal medicine could do a rotation with me, learning the old-school surgical techniques that newer doctors had never been taught. Amanda connected me with the university program. The foundation expanded. Without Brett's embezzlement, we had resources to open 2 new clinics. I named one after David. And here's the thing nobody expected. I was happy. Happier than I'd been in years. One afternoon, about a year after the hearing, Victoria called. It was the first time she'd tried to contact me since the supervised probation began. "Mom?" Her voice was small. "Can we talk?" I almost said no. But I looked at Tommy doing his homework at the table, and I thought about second chances. "What do you want to say?" "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know I can't fix what I did, but I'm getting help. Therapy. Actually working to understand why I did those things. And I want to be honest with you about something." I waited. "I was jealous," she said. "My whole life, you were Dr. Margaret Chen, the guardian. Everyone respected you, admired you, and I was just your daughter. When I got my job at the hospital, I thought I'd finally have my own identity. But even there, people asked about you, compared me to you, and I hated it. So you tried to destroy me?" "I tried to prove I was better. Smarter, more successful," Brett encouraged it. He said we deserved the foundation money more than some charity cases, that we'd worked hard and you'd just gotten lucky. She paused. I see now how twisted that was. "What do you want, Victoria?" "I want to know if there's any chance you'll ever let me see my son again." I looked at Tommy. He'd stopped doing homework and was watching me carefully. "Do you want to see your mom?" I asked him. He thought about it for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Maybe, if she's better." I went back to the phone. Supervised visits. Once a month to start. Ellen will arrange a neutral location. You show up sober, on time, and you don't ask Tommy for anything. You don't complain about consequences. You don't make him feel guilty. You just spend time with him. "Can you do that?" "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank your son for being more forgiving than I am." I hung up. Tommy came over and hugged me. "Are you okay, Gran?" "I'm okay, sweetheart. Are you?" He nodded against my shoulder. "I'm glad I live with you now." "Me too." That night, after Tommy went to bed, I sat in David's old office, looking at the photo on his desk. It was from our 30th anniversary party, both of us laughing at some joke I couldn't remember anymore. "I handled it," I told him. "Just like you would have wanted. With evidence, not emotion." The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. I had my grandson. I had my work. I had my purpose. And I had proven something important. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's just the calm before you perform surgery. Clean, precise, and absolutely necessary. They'd thought I was declining, fading away into comfortable irrelevance. They'd forgotten who I was. I was Dr. Margaret Chen, the guardian, and I'd never lost a patient I was determined to save, even when that patient was myself.